Okay, good morning, everyone. Masechta Bava Kama, Daf Pei Hey Amud Aleph. Just to recap a little bit, we spoke yesterday mainly about paying for medical fees for somebody who you caused a wound to, where the wound required that the victim bandage his wound, and we saw three opinions about what happens in a case. Really, we said person certainly got a reshus to bandage his wound to the minimal degree that he needs to, even though such a thing is going to cause excess warmth and sores or blisters. We said he's allowed to do that. But what happens if the victim overly bandages it too much? We saw three opinions about whether or not you have to pay for the extra medical fees and extra sheves, also for that matter, the extra unemployment fees if there were for such a case. So you have to pay for that. So we thought that the Tanna Kama agreed that's called smachim machmas hamaka. We said it's called blisters that come machmas hamaka. It came because of the makkah, because you wrapped it too much. It came about. Do you have to pay for that? So the Tanna Kama said you pay. The first shita in the Brisa said you pay for both sheves and ripui. We saw Rebbe Yehuda said that there's a difference between sheves and ripui. Ripui, where the Torah repeated it twice, v'rapoi yirapei. We said there's a special chumrah that the Torah gives you should pay for the ripui. For sheves, you do not have to pay. And the last sheet of the Rabbanon Basroi said you do not have to pay for sheves or ripui, because they learned out the ripui from the sheves. The sheves you didn't have to pay, and ripui were learned out from there. And the double lashon, they explained to teach me this halacha that Rabbi Yishmael says that if we just see that that they use the double lashon, that the Torah gives reshus for a roifer to actually practice refuah. So one interesting thing that I saw, Tosfos asked the question, why do you exactly need a double lashon for that? If it said one lashon that you pay for medical expenses, I'd also understand that the Torah is giving reshus for a roifer to practice medicine. But Tosfos explains that I would think maybe there'd be a difference between a man-made wound or a wound b'dei shemayim. I would think that maybe when a person hits you, maki b'dei adam, then maybe that the doctor's got reshus to then deal with it. But perhaps if it will be from heaven, some sort of sickness or some sort of wound, then I would think, as Tosfos says, nirek soiser gezeiras hamelech. Just the end of the Tosfos, the Tibur Maskul Shenitno Reshus L'Roifer L'Rapois. He says, I would think maybe if it was a heavenly decree on the person, some sort of machala or something, then I would think that you're soiser gezeiras hamelech. You are contradicting what Hashem decreed on that person. That's why we need a special double lashon to explain that not only a human-inflicted wound has got reshus, as the doctor's got permission to heal, but even a b'dei shemayim. The question was asked from Baruch yesterday about how do the other Rabbanim learn this drasha from, and we might see on Amud Beis it could be that there are extra places to learn it from, but I still haven't got full clarity in that question. Fine, that's what we said about that. One other thing we said was that if smachim come shaloi machmas hamaka, if a person gets wounds that are not machmas hamaka, we said a special pasuk or a miyut that you do not pay for that. That was the rak. Maybe rak is a miyut. Miyut means it's coming to exclude certain things you do not pay for, and that was that if things come machmas shaloi machmas hamaka, you don't pay for that. But the Gemara asked the obvious question: if it doesn't come machmas hamaka, then of course you don't pay. If I chopped off someone's arm and then the next day they got a rash on their leg, that's the rash shaloi machmas hamaka. Of course I don't pay for that. What's that got to do with the damage that I done? So the Gemara says that the exclusion is needed in a case where it wasn't completely irrelevant. It wasn't you chopped off his arm and then he got a rash on his leg. Rather, the person was supposed to deal with his arm in the way the doctor told him to deal with it in this prescribed way, and he went and did his own home remedy, which actually not only didn't work, it caused him more damage. You do not have to pay for the extra damage. That was the exclusion. Shaloi machmas hamaka, you don't pay for that. Very good. Then, so I believe we're holding by the line that starts the I Omale Asyech Ano. That's 5 lines up from the top. It's the last of the semi-wide lines on Pei Hey Amud Aleph. Starts with the word the I. 5 lines up from the bottom. 5 lines up from the bottom. The I Omale Asyech Ano. Now we've got an interesting Gemara today. The next few lines which discuss paying for the refuah. We said Ripui is one of the 5 payments. You have to pay for medical fees, we said. So what if the guy comes up with the chokhmas and he says, listen, I'm not going to pay for you for your medical fees. I am going to cure you. I'll be the doctor. You don't go to another doctor. I'll be the one that will do it for you. Asyach ano. Ano means I will. Asyach means I will heal you. I'll be the one that heals you, so I won't have to pay for a doctor. Is that such a good claim that he's making, and therefore the victim has to accept what he's saying and not go to another doctor? Or do we say no? He doesn't have to accept it. Or Malay, so that the nechbal, the victim says, you look like to me that you're going to be a crouching lion. In other words, you already damaged me once. Did Rashi say anything about this? 1 second. You already damaged me once, and you're not going to do it again. Basically, you're the guy that damaged me. I'm not going to, you're going to take the law into your own hands and maybe blind my other eye. You've done one already. I'm not getting involved with you being my doctor. But if he says, fine, I won't heal you, but I'll bring you a doctor for free. In other words, I've got my brother, whatever, my friend's father's a doctor, and he's going to do it for free, and therefore I'm not paying for you the doctor fees because I can provide you with a doctor for free. Basically, a doctor who heals for free is worth nothing, useless, no use. Who wants a doctor that's going to be for free? So therefore, I'm not accepting your offer. I don't have to accept your offer, and please pay me the bills for the doctor that you owe me. Fine. Fine, I'm not going to give you a free doctor, but I've got a cheap doctor that comes from, he lives in Bnei Brak, or he lives in Tiberia, and he's going to come down. He lives far away. Asya Rechika. Rechika means far away. I'm going to bring you he's discounted price, and the doctors in Ramat Bet Shemesh are, premium top fees. So I'm going to get you the one from somewhere else, and he's much cheaper. Yeah, that's what I'm going to bring. Omalei Asya Rechika Eina Avira. A doctor who comes from far away, Eina Avira, is going to blind my eye. Why is he going to blind the eye? So Rashi says he's not going to be worried about his reputation. He's going to go back to his hometown, and no one's going to know what he did, and his reputation is not at stake. And accidents might happen. He might not do a good healing process, and therefore he doesn't have to accept the doctor from far away because he's not got his reputation at stake. He's not going to be so careful. If he says "Have li lididi," va'ana masina lanafshay. What happens now? We're talking. The conversations change now. Let's say that the victim says, "Please give me the money, but I'm going to heal myself." In other words, you owe me the doctor's fees, so pay them to me. But I'm not going to use them for the doctor. I've got the right to keep them to myself because once you pay them to me, they're my money, and I'm going to choose to do what I want with it, and I'm going to choose to heal myself. Now, seemingly, you would think, what's wrong with that? You're paying for the money, and the guy doesn't want to go to the doctor, so it's his problem. So maybe he's got a good time. But no, the victim, they're not the victim. The perpetrator, the choiver, can say, I'm not paying you in such a case. If you're not going to pay it for the doctor, I've got the right to hold back the money for myself and not pay you. If that's true, you're going to be, you said you're going to heal yourself. But you're going to try also all your home remedies, and you're going to be posheya b'nafshecha. You're going to be negligent in yourself. And you're going to end up taking more from me. Because it's going to end up being more. You're going to do an expensive remedy, or what you do is not going to work, and you're going to have to do something else, and you're going to have to buy more medicines and more things, and you're going to end up. If you don't go to a professional, you're going to do it yourself, and it's just going to, the fees are just going to go beyond, whatever, and I'm not going to pay for that. However, what happens? And what happens if the victim says to him, "Koitzli meikats, pay me the money. We're going to fix an amount. We'll fix an amount, $250, pounds, shekels." Whatever rand, right? Whatever currency you're working, fix the amount that it is for the amount, and then it won't go more than that. Let's say the victim says, "Pay me £250." That's the amount that the damage was. And if I'm share with myself, I'm not going to ask for more. I'm moichel on asking for more. I'm not going to. So then there's no problem. Like the Gemara said, that the bills are just going to keep going up and up and up. Then they're not, because it's going to be fixed. So in such a case, does the victim have a good claim of pay me the money and I'll do what I want with it and I'll heal myself and I won't collect more? If that's true, then all the more so you are. I'm also loy nicheli b'hochi says. I also don't want this, says Rashi, because if you appreciate it in yourself and it ends up being more, even though you waived the rights to get more, doesn't look good for me. Everybody's going to see that you're majorly in distress and you need extra. You go around collecting now for extra medical fees because I was the one that damaged you, even though you caused that to yourself, but people don't necessarily realize that. And my reputation is also at stake. In other words, it's a time, not that he's going to have to pay more money. He's not going to have to pay more money, the perpetrator, because they fixed the price. But the fact that the guy needs the extra money and he's not going to get it, that doesn't look good for him, and it's not good for him in the reputation of other people that he should have hurt someone and they can't collect the full amount of the money. So therefore, the bottom line is you have to pay for the refuah, and it works from two sides around. The choivel can't say with all his chokhmas, I'm going to bring you, I'm going to heal you, or I'm going to bring you a doctor from far away, or I'm going to bring you a doctor for free. All those things, we do not accept those kind of arguments, and therefore he has to pay for the amount. But mitzad sheni, if the victim says, pay me the amount and I'm going to keep it and heal myself, we also don't accept that because maybe you won't do a good job. And even if they fix the price, we don't accept that because then that won't look good for the choiver who did the actual. How much they work out, how much to pay. That's how much the doctors would charge to what? What? Nezek and Sar and Ripui. With this Gemara is just talking about Ripui.
So we get a fixed amount.
For the medical fees, we make a fixed amount. What it would cost in this situation. I think the medical fees are probably one of the easier ones to evaluate because go to the doctor and see what the doctor's going to charge, and that's the amount you're going to have to pay for. But the other payments are evaluated in other ways. Like nezek, we said you evaluate how much he would be on the slave market, and Sar we spoke about yesterday, evaluating how much a person would take to have his hand chopped off and all those things. But this is
all of them together and get 1 amount.
100%. You add all of them together, you get one lump sum of money, and that you pay. Correct. That's what you do. Very good. So we're holding now by the second line from the bottom. Tana. There's a question? Oh, sorry.
With the doctors, I mean,
Yeah.
some injuries could take a number of sessions, consultations, etc. So the perpetrator has to pay the doctor direct as he goes along, or is it the victim pays and then gets the money back? How does it work?
That's a good question. It seems to me that he pays the victim the money. It probably would be before I think it will be before the victim pays the money to the doctor. In other words, you get a quote from the doctor probably, and then it will be this much money. Go and collect that from the mazik and then pay that to the doctor. That's what I think. I'm not 100% sure. And I would imagine if in time went on, they saw that the fees went on and it was more than they evaluated, then they would go and he would pay that money also. In other words, sometimes with time, as long as it was all a direct result of the makkah, then even if in a later stage the doctor said, actually, I see it's more complicated than I thought, it's worth more, presumably then he would have to compensate that as well. He would have to. That's what I think. For me, it sounds like from this Gemara, he's not paying directly to the doctor. Sounds like he's paying to the victim. Victim then pays it because that was the argument. The victim said, "Pay me, and I'll keep it for myself, and I'll do what I want." So it sounds like he is paying to the victim. That's what I think, without seeing it in the actual Shulchan Aruch or the Halakha. Okay. Any more other questions? We're good. Okay. The second line from the bottom, Tana. Tana means we taught in the following brayso. For kulon mishtalmin b'mokom nezek. We spoke a little bit about this before. This concept that even though we've got 5 payments, they all come together, and even though when you pay nezek, which is the overall damage that you caused for the person, you still pay the other 4, sheves, tsar, ripui, and boishes. You pay them all, even though you're paying for nezek. But that, the Gemara says, needs a special makor. Mina hani mili. How do we know these words? That you are chayav to pay for these 4 payments, even though you're paying for nezek. Again, that you might have thought, what's the havamina? You might have thought when you pay nezek, you're paying this big general fee. The guy lost his arm, and you've taken him on the slave market, and you're saying how much would he be sold with it if he had 2 hands, and how much is he depreciated in value? Then that would be a large payment that perhaps we would argue would cover everything. But even though the Torah says, for example, rak shiv toyitain v'rapoy yerapeh, maybe that's talking about when there was no nezek involved. Like we said, for tsar, if you just did a little bit of a nezek on his fingernail, and we're going to see in a minute on Amud Beis what the case is when there's no nezek. But perhaps when there's no nezek involved, that's when you pay shevis and boishes. How do you know, and ripui, that you pay all of these things even when you're paying nezek? So on that, Omar Rav Zvid, Mishmei Derova, Omar Kra, he says as follows: Petza tachas petza. This we quoted above in the Gemara. Litein tsar b'mokum nezek. From here we learn from the extra phrase of petza tachas petza, you see that you pay tsar even though you are paying nezek. That's what he says. Says the Gemara, Hi miboy alei, and we turn over the page to pay Hayamad Beis. The rabbis shoygeg kemezid va'oinis karatzon. We learned in the second parak, or you learned Rav Teichtel in the second parak of Bava Kama, a halacha of Adam Muad La'olam. In other words, that means to say, even though Shiur has got Tam and Muad, Shiur pays for the first time for the first 3 times pays half nezek, chatzi nezek. Whereas when it comes to an Adam, he pays all the time nezek shalom, and not only that, even when he's shoygeg, when he's mazid, when he's oinus, when he's rotzon, even if he does it when he's asleep, let's say, if I'm not mistaken, we spoke about a guy who goes to sleep next to Kalim, and while he's in his sleep, he extends his limbs and he kicks his legs, he knocks over the kli. If I'm not mistaken, Tosa says as long as you fell asleep when the kalim were there, and not that you fell asleep and then someone put the kalim next to you. In any event, you're chayav on shoyig, amazed, and oinus and karatzon. You're chayav in all the cases. How do we know such a thing? So that was learned out from the phrase petza tachas petza. That was an extra ribui, an extra inclusive term to tell me that even shoyig and even mazid and oinus you are chayav to pay for. So the Gemara is arguing, how can you say that petza tachas petza teaches me the halacha you pay tsar b'mokum nezek? We need it for the halacha that you pay oinus karotzon, oinus kamez, shoyig kamezid oinus karotzon. Says the Gemara, im kain nichtav kra petza ber petza. If all it's coming to tell me is shoyig kamezid oinus karotzon that you chayav in any event, even without any negligence, then the Torah should have said petza ber petza. Why did it say petza tachas petza? Shma mina tarti. That's 2 extra things over here. Not only the petza and petza, the word tachas teaches me both things. Also teaches me the halacha we learned in the first parak, second parak, that the Adam Amazik is chayav even on oinus, even when there's no negligence involved at all. And also to tell me the halacha that you pay for tsar b'mokum nezek. That's the first one. Rab Papa Mishmei the Rava Omar. Omar Kra v'rapo yirapei. The double lashon of rapo yirapei litein refuah b'mokum nezek. That teaches me that you pay for refuah b'mokum nezek. The double lashon again. The Gemara is about to ask if you're thinking we already use the double lashon perhaps, but let's just see. You pay refuah b'mokum nezek, even though you're paying for nezek, the big overall fee of the guy that amount he depreciated in price. You still on top of that are paying for refuah. Fine. Says the Gemara, "Hi mi boy, look at the Tana to be Rabbi Shmuel. We already use this for Tana to be Rabbi Yishmael. The Tana to be Rabbi Yishmael, V'rapo Yirape, Mekan Shenit Nereshus L'Roi for the Rapois. We use the double lashon to teach me that a doctor's got permission to practice medicine and to practice refuah. So how can you say we use the double lashon to teach me that you pay refuah even b'makom nezek? We use it already to teach me he's got refuah. The doctor can practice medicine. Even though we said above, like Tosa said, maybe it looks like you're going against the Gezeirah of Hashem. You're allowed to do it. In Cain says, if it was teaching me just the halacha that a doctor can heal, it should have said V'roife Yirape. Shma Minah, why does it say V'rapo Yirape? It's also a change over here, change in the expression from the standard way of V'roife Yirape. Teaches me Litzein Refuah B'mokum Nezek. Teaches me, I think the Pashas also, not only does it teach me that a doctor can practice refuah, it also teaches me you can do refuah, you have to be refuah b'mokum nezek. Fine. Then the Gemara says, you also, says the Gemara, you need the double lesson for another thing. Like we said above, to repeat the Torah ripui, because like we said above, in a case of when a person had to wrap his wound in a bandage, we said, as we spoke out in the beginning, a sikkum from yesterday, even though really you would think that maybe he's allowed to do that because, he's got a certain degree, a reshus to wrap the bandages up. Maybe you're potter for the extra blisters and things that come out. And we learn from Rapo Yirape, according to the 3 opinions, according to the first 2 opinions in the Bryce, so we use Rapo Yirape to teach me that you pay for these you pay for the extra sheves and ripui that was caused through, at least the ripui which was caused through unnecessary bandaging. Says the Gemara, Im makra, oy rapoi, or yerape. It should use the same lashon of rapoi, or yerape. My v'rapoi, yerape. Why did the Torah change it again? Shma mena, you can learn all the things from it, basically. Litin refuah b'makom nezek. You can give refuah b'makom nezek. Basically, from the fact that the Torah doubled it up, and it didn't say roife yerape, and it didn't say rape, it didn't say rafe or yerape. Basically, we learn a lot of extra things from over here, and we can conclude all of these halachas. Basically, I think it comes out, according to some, it comes out you can learn all three things in this drasha. We also learn that a doctor's got reshus to practice medicine. We also learn that you give ripui b'makom, that you pay nezek, even though you pay nezek, you pay ripui as well. And we also learn, according to those opinions in the brisa above, that you pay the extra ripui for blisters and scars that come up through excess bandaging. And just to add on as a closing point for the fact that we saw a roif has got reshus to do it. So I briefly saw that two points. Number one, not only is it a reshus for a roifer, but there's actually a mitzvah involved for a roifer to practice medicine and help people and heal them. And also there's a mitzvah for the damaged party to go to a doctor. A person is not allowed to leave himself in a matzav that is getting damaged. Maybe all these kind of ideas and psukim that a person does have to deal with himself, and you cannot just say, Hashem is going to heal me. That will be a pshia and a negligence. This is all a conclusion or a continuation of these halachas that a person has to deal with his refuah. There's not only is reshus been given for a roifer to be merape, but now certainly if the roifer's got the efsharis to do it, or his damnut to do it, to his damnut, he's got the opportunity to do it. And if he doesn't do it, then it's certainly we consider, I think, somewhat a shofech domim. In any event, it's the doctor should be practicing, and the people should be going to the doctor and certainly looking after everybody's health. But obviously, the best thing is prevention, which is obviously not to damage anyone at all. That's obviously the first limud from this whole parak is obviously avoid damages at all costs. And if you do, then these are the chiyuvim that are involved. In any event, says the Gemara about 10 lines down from the top. Michlal the mashkachas lehu shaloi b'mokom nezek. That's all of this is mashma that we find these cases mashkachas lehu. Mashkachas means we find them. We find all of these chiyuvim shaloi b'mokom nezek. Sounds like we know there's 5 chiyuvim. Sounds like each one you could potentially have by in and of itself. That's why we had special limudim that you pay for ripui even without nezek. Just as an aside, how do you know? I think that you pay for boishes and sheves even when there's mokum nezek. Excuse me. If I'm not mistaken, Tosfos above said on Daf Chavav that we can learn it out from what we just said over here. We just had a limud that you pay refuah even by mokum nezek, and there's a binyan av to the other ones also tsar, also ripui and sheves, and also boishes. You pay them even for mokum nezek. But the Gemara is saying, so if this is confusing, it's michlal that you find them shloim mokum nezek. In other words, you could have each one of these chiyuvim by itself. You could have boishes by itself, just pure embarrassment by itself, without any loss of unemployment, without any medical fees, without any nezek. Or you could have loss of unemployment, sheves, without causing anybody any embarrassment, without any nezek, without any medical fees. You could have each one of them individually by themselves. They're mutually exclusive. You can have them by themselves. How do you find it? Now the Gemara is going to explain how you find it. Nezek, excuse me. How do you actually find them without nezek? Says the Gemara, tsar ketekatani. Tsar, as it already taught in our Mishnah, tsar kavoi b'shvut oy b'masmer afilu al tzipornoi mokom she'enu oisei chabura. Tsar we already know, we already established. That is when if a person gets burnt by a shvut, by a spear, or by a masmer, by a nail, even on his fingernail, a mokum where it doesn't make a chabura. Such a burn, a minor burn on the fingernail, will not cause any depreciation on the slave market, will not cause any embarrassment, will not cause any unemployment loss, and there are no medical fees involved. There's only pure and utter pain, right? Not too much, but enough that there's payment of tsar, and therefore that's tsar by itself. That we saw in the Mishnah. Ripui. How do you find the case of medical expenses where there were no other expenses involved. Says the Gemara, the guy was, you damaged the person and he had a certain amount of pain. Vasalik, va'aisile sama charifa, and he put on the pain. I think what the Gemara means is that you paid for the damages, but the guy, excuse me, no, you hurt him a certain amount. But aisile sama charifa, and then he put on his wound an extra sama charif. He put on it a very, very strong cream, right? He put on it a very strong cream, but achvere lebisre, and it actually blinded, or it very much lightened it, it bleached, it stained his skin. So he overdid it. He put an overly strong cream on him. He has to put now on another cream, which is going to turn it back to how it was before. So that's a case where you're only paying for ripui, because in that case you have to pay the extra cream. Now I'm not fully clear exactly. Yeah, that is what I was going to ask. I'm not sure whether this means to a case where the person himself was negligent and chose to put on a stronger cream, in which case then I don't understand why you would have to pay the extra. So maybe this is talking about a case. Let me just see if Rashi says anything to help us. I don't think he does in this case. It was getting better. I'm not sure, but I would guess maybe that the doctor maybe prescribed something which was too much. I'm not sure. We'll have to check this case for tomorrow. Please excuse me for not being so clear about this, but this is the case where the Gemara is indicating that there's only a payment of ripui, because there was no extra pain. There was no extra pain involved. There was just a question of turning the skin back to the right color, and that required an extra payment of medical expenses. And that's a case of only medical expenses in and of itself. Anybody have any other clarity in this case? Okay. He what? Who's the assailant? Excuse me. The damager, the perpetrator. He bought him a one which was too strong. So then he has to pay for the extra difference. Question is, I don't know why he should have gone to a doctor. The victim should have gone to a doctor. Why he used this extra strong, potent cream of the perpetrator? The extra strong one. So then, but then why should the perpetrator pay if the doctor, And it's like the guy caused the damage. Well, as long as there was no clear negligence, the doctor just tried. So it's still a. I also thought that perhaps would be the case over here, something like that. Have to restore it, right? And that's only a payment. In any event, that's only a payment of ripui, because I guess there was no extra tsar or something. So to pay for the extra cream, that's the case of ripui itself. Okay. Sheves tahadke the indurna ubatle. Sheves is a case of, how do you find a case you cause someone unemployment for, and that's all you cause. You didn't cause them any depreciation in nezek, any boishes, any tsar. So the Gemara says that you basically locked him in a room. If you lock him in a room and he's now mavatal from doing malacha, he can't go to his workplace because he can't leave the room. He's locked in. There's no depreciation on the slave market. There's no boishes as well. Yes, I'm not exactly sure why not. Perhaps he is embarrassed by being locked in the room, but maybe it's not so embarrassing, or maybe nobody knows about it. And there's no medical expenses, right? Presumably you left him in there with some food or some drink, or maybe for not so long, or maybe you put him in there for a few hours, when in those hours he would normally be going and working per hour as a whatever you want, and you can't get that money now. You have to pay him that sheves. That's a case where sheves can be individually isolated by itself. Boishes derok le ba'apei. Boishes, when you embarrassed him by spitting in front of him, that's also a case where you're only going to have boishes. You have no depreciation on the slave market. You're going to have no tsar, no medical fees, and no unemployment. Just have pure and out of boishes. So basically, the Gemara has established each one of these 5 cases, you can have them individually, and if they're individual, you for sure pay for them. The chiddush of the sugya we said above is that even when there's nezek, which is in most cases when you chop someone's hand off, there's most cases they normally all come together to some degree. Then, as Yosef said correctly, you do an evaluation of each one, and you pay one lump sum, which will include nezek and the tsar and the ripui and the sheves and the boishas. That's that. Fine. Now we're at the 2 dots. We're starting a new sugya of sheves. Exactly how you get involved with evaluating the unemployment loss, the loss due to unemployment of the person. Brian Oisai Ki'ilu hu shomer kishuin. You view him as if he is a shomer kishuin. Now, this sugya is a little bit confusing. I must admit, I don't have full clarity in myself in the whole sheves. But from what I understand, and I think Rav Teichtel also on the first day of Choyben might have explained this to you a little bit about sheves. The way I understand sheves, and we might see it a little bit in the Gemara, is as follows: the amount you pay for sheves, there's 2 kufas of time after you choyvel in somebody. If you, let's say, chop off their hands, right? So the first kufa of time is where the guy's obviously in major panic, and he stitch up his arm, and he's in bed for, let's say, a month, right? He's in bed for a month, he's in too much pain, and he's not functional as anything, actually, right? He's not functional as anything. But then once that month is over, he goes back to, so to speak, regular life. It's not regular life because originally he might have been doing many things with his arms, which he cannot do now. But after that time, he will be, as we're going to see in a second, let's say a shomer kishuin. After that month has passed, he will be able to watch cucumbers. You don't need to be too physically mukhshar, in order to watch cucumbers. Just 1 second. So that's what he's going to be doing from now on after the month. But within that month, not only was he not capable of doing what he was originally doing, he can't even be the shomer kishuim, which is going to end up being in that month. So in that month, you pay for the amount it would cost a monthly rate of a shomer kishuim, because that's in the end what he's going to end up being doing after he's back from his chavola. And in that period of time when he was in bed in too much pain, he wasn't able to do what he's eventually going to end up doing. So you pay for that month of rent for the shomer kishuim. Yes, your parents.
Looking at my notes, this is the shepherd's basic wage.
Basic wage.
Right, cucumber. But the balance of damages payments covered by nezek.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Correct. That's correct. I do agree with Rabbi Teichtel, Baruch Hashem, and that is as follows. What about the fact that before you chopped off his arm, he was a much more talented person, doing much more than just shomer kishuim? He was a circus juggler, or whoever knows what he was doing. So why don't you pay that amount of wages during the time? The answer is, as Rav Peretz said correctly, that amount is included in the nezek valuation that you did. In other words, you take a person on the slave market with 2 hands who was very talented, who could juggle with 2 hands, who could do whatever he wanted to do, 2 jobs once with 2 hands, and ever with 2 hands is much more obviously functional. And then how much is he worth now without that hand? And that's a big payment that we also spoke out is going to be like a lifelong payment, basically. And that's a big amount. That covers the fact that he's now not talented with 2 arms. Correct. Exactly. That's 100% true. The original talent that he had is covered with the nezek payment that you paid. However, the fact that you've taken him out of wages from being what is in the future going to be the basic wage, as you said correctly, in a month's time, he's going to go back to a basic wage, and that's watching cucumbers. That amount you have caused him to lose in the month when he's going to be out of action and complete. That you pay the basic wage that is going to be later. That is correct. Good. So that's how I understand the way sheves works. Let's see what the Brisa says over here. Tana Rabban. Sheves royan oisai ki'ilu hu shomer kishuim. We look at him as if he is a watcher of cucumbers, a basic wage, and for that month that he's out of practice, that's what you pay. Ve'im toima loksa midas adin. If you're going to ask, loksa midas adin, loksa, it's afflicted midas adin, meaning the strict letter of the law, meaning this is not fair. Loksa midas adin, it's not so fair. Why is it not fair? The key miftach hai gavra. The Gemara wants to argue. It's an interesting argument. We have to see if it stays the maskana. when miftach haigava, when this person gets better, when he's healed, lav agra the shomer kishuin who shocker. The Gemara wants to argue, at least in the argument, not like what I just told you. The Gemara wants to say, even when he gets better, he's going to be more capable than just a cucumber watch. Ella, Doli Davla, the Shokil Agra. He's going to be able to draw water from the well, from the spring, and he's going to take schar for that. For example, that's talking about a person who, let's say, lost their leg or their leg, so he still can stand by the well and use his arms to draw water out from the well. That's a higher paid wage, argues the Gemara, than a cucumber watcher. So a person who lost his leg or legs even maybe can actually get a higher wage of drawing water. Inami, what about in a case, this is based on Rashi, if his arm was chopped off when he can't draw water from the well, Azil b'shliach b'shokil aga, but he could still be a delivery man. If he's still got his legs, he's lost one arm, he can still manage to be a delivery man, and that's also a higher paid wage than a cucumber watcher. So what the Gemara is arguing that why are you viewing him as if he's a shomer kishuin, as if he's as a cucumber watcher, which is a lower, very basic standard wage. Even somebody who loses their arm or their leg, the Gemara is arguing, is a bit more capable than doing just that. That's what the Gemara argues. The question is, what's the Gemara's answer on that? Midas adin loylocks. So says the Gemara, Midas adin loylocks, or no? There is no infringement of the strict letter of the law. Because you already gave him the amount of his arm or the amount of his leg. The Gemara here is somewhat unclear, because that explanation of giving him the arm or the leg, we explained maybe that's why you don't have to pay for the original talent that he was using. But the Gemara seemingly gave a good argument that he could be still available. So there is a big dion over here between Rashi and Tosfos. The way Rashi seems to learn this Gemara, when you see Midas din loylok sabakach, Rashi says that basically the answer of the Gemara is when he gets better, he's not really roy. To the Gemara is arguing, it's not so true. He's not really roy to draw water or to go and do shlichus. He really is only roy to be a shomer kishuim, and therefore, in the end of the day, he is going to only be a shomer kishuim. Again, as I said, this Gemara is somewhat unclear because the Gemara wanted to argue that he could do these jobs. So what's really the Gemara answering? Rashi's sheet is quite unclear. Without going into it too much, because I didn't manage to go into it too much, but it seems that one perhaps explanation that Rashi means is that in Rov cases, in most cases, the person's going to end up being a shomer kishuim. Right? In most cases, that's the standard thing that happens when someone really loses a neighbor. That was obviously a common job back then. I don't know, the standard case is going to end up being a shomer kishuim, and therefore that's how you view it. Even though it could be in the miut of cases, he is technically got the ability to go and do more capable things, but we have to look at the Rov cases, and Rov cases he ends up being a shomer kishuim. So therefore the Gemara is arguing as an answer that no, we don't say he's technically capable of doing more talent. Even someone who loses their arm is technically capable of being a shliach, being a delivery man, and someone who loses their leg is perhaps technically capable of drawing water, but since at the end of the day, that's not going to be the normal thing that comes out. The Rov cases, the majority of cases, such a big chavala, such a big loss of an organ, or an arm or a leg, causes a limb, causes the person to end up being a shomer kishuim. So that month of period in time, you pay according to that. That's the standard minimum wage that we say that in most cases, that's what's going to be, and that's what you end up paying for. That's, as I said, there's a lot more going on in this Gemara. It seems that Rashi, Tosfos seems to ask several questions on Rashi, and even in Rashi itself, there's a bit of a question, what's the correct way to understand Rashi and the correct girsa in Rashi. There's things what to say, but that, I think, will be one simple way to understand the Gemara. The Gemara is arguing and answering that in most cases, it's going to end up being a shomer kishuim, so that's the amount of money that you pay in the interim period. Okay, we'll stop it for today, and we'll pick up tomorrow from here. That's